I am going to go ahead and get started as people kind of come in as we're talking so that we are respectful of everyone's time. So my name is Dr. Nick Winterzianis. My pronouns are she and hers. I go by Nick or Dr. Nick. I will do an image description of myself for accessibility. So I am a white woman. I have fuchsia pink hair. I am wearing super cool headphones with a mic. Yeah, Cole gets it. And I have black and white rimmed glasses and a polka dot scarf. And behind me, I have a privacy screen with some skeleton lights and a bookshelf. So today on Crip Conversations, we are going to be talking with some UT students and some representatives of various resources on campus that are probably good for everyone to know about, but we're also going to be asking them kind of about their experiences on UT campus and kind of what that's been like and some thoughts that they have about that, about their disabled identity and culture on UT campus, kind of what that experience has been. So I am going to let everyone introduce themselves. Just so everyone knows, we do have closed captioning available. So please, if that is something that you are interested in, if you are in a loud place or if you would like to have closed captioning, please click on that at the lower right-hand corner of the screen. And thank you, Rochelle, for doing that closed captioning for us. We also I want to say thank you to Kate Jones, who is my right and left-hand person right now, helping me through the webinar and all the technicalities. So hopefully we have a fairly smooth webinar, as smooth as technology can be. So I will turn it over to Emily Shryock, and we will kick it off there.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Emily Shryock. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Assistant Director of the Services for Students with Disabilities office. So our primary role on campus is to make sure that students have equal access to their academic experiences on campus. But one part of my job that I really enjoy is getting to work with student organizations, disability-related student organizations. And so I'm super excited today to get to hear from our student representative leaders here, hopefully share a little bit more about their organizations and the different ways that they are promoting access and changing concepts of disability on campus. So super excited to be part of this and to lend the student perspective to the Crip Conversations series. So thank you all so much for your time and willingness to share today.
Yes. Cole, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hey guys, I'm Cole. I use he, him pronouns. I am the vice president for the Disability Advocacy Student Coalition, kind of an image description. I'm a white man, brown hair, green eyes. I'm wearing like a white UT shirt. Have kitchen cabinets in the background. Would you like me to discuss task now or shall I leave that to Niley?
You can go somewhere else because we're going to do that as part of our conversation.
Okay, sounds good.
So Niley, if you want to go ahead.
Hello, I'm Niley Salahuddin. I am the president of Disability Advocacy Student Coalition. I go by she, her. An image description of myself, I am Southeast Asian tan skin with an orange headscarf. And, I'm a junior advertising student.
Thank you. Cheryl, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Cheryl. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a second-year integrated master's in professional accounting major, and I am a part of the Disability and Inclusion Agency within student government.
Thank you. Mackenzie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mackenzie Ulam. I am a senior psychology major. My pronouns are she and her. I am the president of NAMI on campus, NAMI standing for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And for a brief image description, I am also a white woman. I have medium length brown hair. I'm wearing a striped shirt and I have glasses, and my background is just blind, so it's pretty boring, but I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Sarah?
should unmute myself. Hi, my name is Sarah Polar. I do go by Morgan. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a third-year social work major, and I am the president of Type Texas, the Type 1 diabetes organization on campus. An image description, I am also a white woman with blue hair, and I'm wearing a black shirt.
Fantastic. Oh, social work solidarity. So I work at the Texas Center for Disability Studies, where I lead the Disability Studies, Critical Disability Studies program. And part of that is that I get to do programming on campus, and part of that is the Crip Conversations series. So throughout the year, we're going to have various conversations with folks, kind of talking about disability culture, disability studies, just kind of everything that has to do with that. And we recently renamed it Crip Conversations to highlight the reclaimed language of Crip, and also to give a nod to Crip theory. So all of those will kind of come into conversation as we're moving forward. But I wanted to just kind of give a shout out to Texas Center for Disability Studies, and the courses are currently offered through the School of Social Work. So I get to live in two worlds and love it. So I'm going to kind of kick off the conversation. This is going to be more of a conversation between us all. While I am technically the facilitator, I really just, you all are the experts. I want you all to jump in as you see fit. There's not too many rules here. So I'm going to start off with a question, and then whoever feels like answering first can start. So the first question is, what motivated you personally to get involved with the organization that you are currently a part of? And if you want to also share what that organization is and kind of what it does, and maybe that's why you were personally drawn to it, that would also be helpful. So who would like to get started?
I would be happy to start.
Thank you, Cole.
So it's Cole again. So the organization that I'm part of is the Disability Advocacy Student Coalition. For me, going into college and being like, I guess, having a public school education, I kind of saw myself in the classroom as kind of a token physically disabled kid. And so I always, like with being able to go to a large institution and having organizations surrounding disability and disability pride for students was really a priority for me, especially when coming to UC. So like I knew that I really wanted to be a part of this disability community at UT. And for me, I definitely see DASC as kind of the hub for disability and for people with a variety of different disabilities to be able to interact and share their experiences and be able to talk about different topics related to disability and how they affect not only us as students, but just generally the disabled community. So that was kind of my motivation for wanting to join a disability advocacy org at UT.
Thank you, Cole. Who would like to go next? Because I hear this draw from being the only person in an environment, right? That you felt kind of like isolated in that kind of experience, and then coming to UT and wanting to be part of a bigger group. Is that correct?
Definitely for me. I mean, okay. I mean, because my first experience, I was in tech, like for lack of better terms, like special needs, preschool and program, but like otherwise throughout like elementary through high school, I was pretty much in the quote unquote like typical classroom setting. So I was kind of I definitely felt for the majority of my experiences in schooling that I was kind of like the token disabled kid in a way.
Okay. I see other people kind of nodding. Who would someone like to kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I guess I can go next. Yeah, very similar to you, Cole. I was, mine is an invisible disability, but I was also the only one that had it. I knew nobody that also had type 1 in my school, and it was really hard. And so coming to this huge university, I didn't even know there was an organization for me on campus. And so that's when I found out about Type Texas, again, the type 1 diabetes organization on campus. And I wanted to know other people that were like me. And it was probably one of the best things like I could have joined, because then you realize like other people have this, and physically knowing other people that have something very similar to you is just a very, I wouldn't say empowering, but like relieving in a way, knowing that you aren't the only one that is going through it. Because people can tell you that all the time, like, there's other people going through it, you're not alone. But until you actually join something like this, you don't really see that. And so that's what pushed me to join it as well, is because like I wanted to know more people like me. And yeah. Sorry, yeah.
No, that's great. I'm actually going to follow up with that in just a bit, but I see Mackenzie is also nodding. If you don't mind also speaking to that, and if you're like, no, thank you, I'll pass, you can also say that. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. This is Mackenzie from the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I was nodding a lot because Morgan talked a lot about how different it is having an invisible disability, and that's what it's like living with a mental illness. And when I got to college, a lot of my mental health conditions were triggered for me. There were things I've been living with my whole life, but due to like the lack of education and awareness surrounding those things, I wasn't aware myself that I had multiple mental illnesses until I got to college, and things got so extreme that I did start therapy and get those diagnoses for the first time. But I found NAMI, which I hadn't heard of really before. And NAMI is something that's all over the country, and it's the largest grassroots mental health organization that there is. And so here at UT, we have a chapter that's just for UT students who want to be involved in NAMI. And this is just full of students who, most of us do have personal experience with mental illness, but some of us, maybe it's a family member or a friend, and we're just really passionate about advocating for those with that experience, because there's a lot of stigma surrounding having a mental illness because it is so invisible. And when you don't have a disability like a mental illness, it's really hard to understand what that's like. And so for people who don't have that experience, it's easy to think that maybe we are choosing to have this mental illness, or the things that we are experiencing are being blown out of proportion by ourselves, but that's really not the case. And so what we do here at NAMI is try to break down that stigma and really educate everyone on the true experience that you have when you have different mental illnesses, rather than maybe what like the media might tell you it looks like, which isn't always really the truth. So I really related to that experience of like dealing with something that people don't see, especially when you're a really high functioning person, which a lot of us are here at UT, and being so high functioning and, excelling so well in academics can sometimes cover up the disabilities that we face. And it's important to bring those to light and show people that, we still are struggling behind the scenes sometimes. And so what I love about NAMI is that we have an environment where people can come and share their story at our meetings and talk about what they've been going through. And it's a game changer to be able to see someone speak and point at them and say, yes, I have been through that exact same thing. And so I could talk forever. I could give a TED talk, but that's just a brief little introduction to what we do here at NAMI.
thank you so much. Cheryl or Niley, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I totally agree with everyone, especially the fact that like growing up, you're the only disabled person, and it's a lot of us, we went to UT, so like in high school, we probably took AP classes or dual credit, right? So at least for me, like everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, she's the blind girl and she's so smart." But I was like, "No, there's like because she's blind, she's smart." And I was like, "No, that isn't the case." And I feel like I felt so alone. And when it wasn't until I got to UT that I realized, oh wow, there's like other people like me, and I felt like there's an actual community, and it just feels like I think everyone has a sentiment where like you truly feel like people understand you, and like it wasn't until I joined DASC was like, oh my gosh, I can like make fun of being blind, and I've never been able to do that before. So I just it feels so good to like find a community.
I am just writing down some things so I don't forget, because I love, like, everybody is saying some amazing things that I want to get back to while also giving the floor to everyone. Thank you so much, Niley. Cheryl, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I can go next. During my introduction, I didn't give like a visual description, so I'll go ahead and do that now. I'm just a white woman with brown hair, blue eyes, glasses, a pink sweatshirt, and some brown kitchen cabinets in the back. So yeah, I mean, growing up, the reason that I joined student or like disability inclusion agency, and so growing up, if I talked to someone and said, oh yeah, I have two brothers, I have a twin actually, they would be like, oh, do I know them? Things like that. I'm like, no, you probably don't know them. They're in the functional academic classroom, I believe is what it was called. So you wouldn't really know them, and then they don't know how to respond, right? And so I just think that growing up kind of is where I relate to kind of the disability community. In high school, going back to what Mackenzie was saying, I struggled with like mental illness, and I didn't really think of that as a disability until I came to college, and people were like, yeah, I mean, it kind of is. And I was like, that's a good point. So just kind of that community that everyone was talking about, I think is really important. And then the reason I joined Disability Inclusion Agency in particular was that I really want to create a change for the disability community as a whole on campus. I think that advocacy and awareness are great things, but ultimately like making that change is what's really important to me.
Okay, so I kind of want to jump off of that. So I like this idea of, you were saying you want to make a change, and that sounds kind of like a grand idea. And I think everyone here is kind of also nodding to that. How do you see that change happening? Because you said awareness is right, like great, we're aware of it, but what does this change look like? What are you thinking might happen through your participation of being part of this group?
So we're holding one event that is an awareness event. It's called the Poster Project. I believe Cole and Niley were both a part of it last semester. And unfortunately, we didn't get the posters up on campus because of COVID. It just went kind of on our social media. Maybe Cole and Niley can speak about their experience with that project in particular. But we're also doing a accessibility petition to try and get UT administration to focus on what isn't accessible to people on campus. Attendance policies, certain buildings on campus, a lot of buildings on campus even, like West Campus, sidewalks and things like that. We're really just kind of focusing on that's our big project, and then working with University Housing and Dining and a few other parts of UT to help big days like move-in day, for example, for dorm rooms to become more accessible for people with physical disabilities.
So Niley and Cole, do you want to speak to your experience a little bit about that?
I'll go. So for DASC, we do a lot of like advocacy and awareness things. So like usually when COVID isn't happening, we have like Disability Fest, which is like a huge event that we put out where there's like different booths and it's like relates to a different disability, and people can try out like, oh, different assistive technology. Maybe they'll just like a white cane maze, like certain things that we're like, we want people to realize like it's not that hard to be disabled. Like it's not like the scariest thing in the world. And then we also have Dinner in the Dark where people eat in a totally black room. And then we have like a panelist. So we do a lot of like awareness. And I think that's something that we're trying to make a change in UT. Another thing that we were doing is that, so I think someone previously just talked about how like there's, UT is not very accessible. I think we all know that. So what we did was actually do a presentation to the ADA construction committee, and we took photos of all like these places. So like stairways where there are no handrails, places where there's no braille, even like if the elevator is the same color as the wall, then you can't tell. And then we took photos and we did a whole presentation to the ADA committee. And that's something that we're trying to change and make UT accessible. And that was like really cool. Do you have anything else to add, Cole?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Natalie was saying. I feel like, particularly with Disability Fest and Dinner in the Dark, what we're looking to do is kind of break down attitudinal barriers. And I feel like that those are harder to measure in terms of actual change than when you have like the ADA giving us like portioning off like 200,000 for accessibility projects. But I do feel like a big part of the mission of DASC is to be open about discussing disability with the wider UT community and being able to just fully, just discuss experiences within the disability discourse in an open and honest way in order to break down the stigmas surrounding disability. And while I do feel like it's more difficult or more challenging to actually physically measure those things, I do feel like attitudinal barriers as well as physical accessibility are definitely like, they are of, I think, certainly equal importance in terms of improving disability experience at UT.
I like that you guys are talking about the physical accessibility. There's also this idea of non-apparent disabilities. And what does accessibility look like for some of those disabilities? And so there was one mention of attendance, which could go across to various disability identities, right? So I'm wondering if someone would want to speak to what accessibility would look like outside of physical accessibility.
Yeah, I can jump on the thing that about the attendance and whatnot. Personally, well, I guess not personally, but for like type 1s, like in our group, it is a medical condition that affects absolutely almost everything else in your body. And so there will be days where I wake up and my blood sugar is very high, and I'm like, I cannot go to class today. Like, I feel so sick. Like where I can't get out of bed, or I feel like I'm gonna vomit, or like all these other things. And I'm like, I really, really just want to stay home. Like it takes so much out of you sometimes to go to class, but the attendance policies are so strict. And even with the accommodations, like sometimes you still get a lot of grief from professors, and it's hard. It's really difficult because it's like, okay, I have to make the choice of a passing grade or my health. And so it's something like that, like that can be pretty difficult. And I wish that there would be a little bit more understanding when it comes to things such as attendance, or like if, yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that people probably don't necessarily think about, is just like, how can attendance policy be more accessible? Are there other things that you think might help with accessibility that are related more to non-apparent disabilities?
Yeah, I can add on to that. This is Mackenzie from NAMI. I completely agree with the attendance policy thing. A lot of students have vocalized that it's very extreme that professors may require a death certificate or evidence that you're at a funeral for a family member in order for you to get out of going to a class. That seems very extreme. And I love that Morgan was talking about how when you do have an invisible disability, it can really impact your physical health and every part of your body. And that's the same way that mental illnesses interact with your health. It's hard to see what's going on there, but when you're severely depressed or when you have really high anxiety, you can be incredibly fatigued and not even have the capability of getting out of bed. So that's why a lot of people, when they are experiencing something like depression, are starting to skip class, because they feel like they aren't even capable of getting out of bed to go that day. And then when you have something like anxiety, where you're having panic attacks about going out in public or having to walk to class or going to like a new location on campus before, that also prohibits you from going to class and then missing out on those attendance points, and your grade suffers. And then, something else I wanted to add in addition to attendance policies is things surrounding public speaking and grades surrounding grades like that. Particularly with students that have social anxiety, or, there may be students that have speech impediments, different things like that. It isn't really fair at all for professors to be grading you on how well of a public speaker you are, how eloquent you may sound. With a student with a speech impediment or a disability surrounding that, that's completely not fair. And then with a student with something like social anxiety, your anxiety gets in the way of you speaking, and then you get docked for having something that you have no control over. And so I wanted to add that component to it as well, that, it's really not fair that we are being graded on things like that when everybody is so different and our capabilities aren't the same.
Yeah. Morgan, did you want to add anything? Because you had unmuted for a second.
Oh, sorry, I had unmuted, so just in case it wouldn't like interfere with the sound and whatnot. No, I would definitely agree with everything that she said, without a doubt. Things like public speaking, like some people just they can't, it doesn't work. Like I know for me, I'm not super big on public speaking because I also suffer from mental health stuff. And so I agree with everything she said that it's not fair. But yeah, if anybody else wants to add anything.
I do want to just kind of go to this idea of what we see in the media. So someone had mentioned that disability is not what the media is telling us, one. And then two, when you were talking about speech, recently in the news, Joe Biden was talking about speech, I think it was stuttering, and kind of how he can help with that. And I think that again is giving a different idea of what disability is, right? Really putting this idea of cure or fixing something. And so I wonder if anyone would speak to kind of like disability in the media, what we're hearing, and kind of the reality of what that is, and maybe what some of those consequences of seeing disability, how it's portrayed, is not necessarily helpful.
I can go. I think for me,
You seem so excited. I was like, go.
Well, I was like going to say, I feel like disability portrayed in the media is in a very limited scope. I do feel like, although I'm probably not the best person to talk on this because I am a white man, the majority of disability portrayed in the media seems like it's white, male, and cishet and everything in between. So I do feel like that kind of colors our view of what disability entails. And I do feel like there's more of a focus on, of course, physical disabilities as opposed to invisible disabilities. So I do feel like there's the difference in the stigma there. But I do feel as though there's still, of course, a very ableist, like centric point of view in portraying disability, and especially when discussing Joe Biden and his stuttering, like if like that's like somehow an issue that needs to be fixed rather than just genuine, like calling it as a genuine disability that shouldn't negate his abilities. I do feel like that should be acknowledged as well.
Yeah, I can kind of touch on that a little bit. What Cole was saying about Joe Biden stuttering and how people feel like it needs to be fixed and it makes him incapable to be president. I know a little bit ago there were some comments made about Trump's weight, and I think that's also ableist because it doesn't make either party less capable. Like those factors don't make either party less capable of being president, right? And so I feel like that rhetoric around it is very hurtful to the disability community as a whole. And I also think just like media, like movies and TV shows and things like that, the first thing that comes to mind is the movie Split. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of it, but it just portrays people who have, I believe, schizophrenia or personality disorders or both, just as very scary people. And ultimately, like people with mental illness are not very scary people, even if they have like PTSD or anything like that. And I think ultimately those kinds of portrayals in the media is what ultimately hurts the disability community as a whole the most. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone, for kind of speaking up. Is there anyone else that wanted to say anything about that issue?
This is Miley. So
Yeah.
there's okay, so when it comes to disability portrayed in media, there's where someone just said how in horror it's like scary, disability is scary, especially physical disability. If you look different, then you're scary, or mental illness, then you're scary. But then there's also the other section where it's like, oh, if you're disabled, then you're a victim, you're helpless, and you can't do anything, which is really sad. So there's this one movie called Me Before You, where this guy, he gets into a motorcycle accident and he becomes completely paralyzed from his neck down. So he's a quadriplegic. And the end of the movie, he decides to commit suicide because he's like, well, there's no point in living because, well, I'm disabled and I can't do anything anymore. But he's like loved and he's rich, and that's so that movie gives us such a terrible message that, oh, once you're disabled or once that you've lost I don't know, once you're disabled, then you can't do anything, which is really frustrating. There's also this other narrative where like you're disabled, but like you're a victim and you can't do anything. Like there's this, or like, oh, there's this, like, what's the thing? I'm trying to think, like, when you're disabled, like maybe one of your like senses are enhanced. And then like, what is that? Daredevil. Yeah, he's blind, and he's because he's blind, he becomes like super, like, he has so many senses, and he's like a superhero now. So that's like, I think that's also bad, because then people like view disability as like, oh, that's like a token. That's so cool. But it's like, well, okay, no, disability is just normal, and it's not scary. It's not something to be pitied at, and it's not something to be like, oh, that's cool, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, so we generally, like in the literature, we've seen that characterized as super crip, um, and just kind of this idea that you are kind of going above and beyond because of your disability, right? Which goes into this idea of also kind of bleeds into this idea of inspo or inspiration porn. Morgan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, if you're, I can wait. It's okay.
No, this is all your shows. I'm just like filling in.
I was just gonna kind of add on like the things that I see about disability in the media. It's like most of the time that I see, it's like 9 times out of 10, it's people that, one, don't have a disability at all, and they can't decide between victimizing, romanticizing, or villainizing all of these different disabilities. And it's one of the most frustrating things to see, because it creates these like myths, I guess, around disability and what these people go through or what they entail. Like, for example, I'm so sorry, I forgot who had mentioned the movie Split, but yeah, for that example, like, that is not what multiple personality disorder is. And that movie made it seem like that's what it is, and that's what everybody thought for so long. And I'm sure some people still think that's what it's like. And it's like everything surrounding it is just all ableism to me. Like, because it's not us with the disabilities that are portraying these, it's people that don't have them. And that's one of the most frustrating things. It's like nobody's listening to the people who have it. They're wanting to make up their own stories, and they want to decide what is or what isn't. And to me, that in the media, that's what I see all over movies, social media, TV, all the time. It's like, are we romanticizing it? Are we villainizing it? Are we like, what are we victims? Like, what it's not up to you, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So with that, so a question that I wanted to ask is, has your involvement in your organizations kind of changed your perspective on disability identity / disability community, given these like messages that so many of us receive about disability? So being a part of these organizations, has that changed how you view your own identity or your own community?
For me, I would say it certainly has been part of DASC. I mean, there's still certainly times where I have internalized ableism, as I think the great majority of the disabled community certainly experiences as well. But being able to be a part of such an inclusive community where I've been able to be able to be educated about so many different other sorts of disabilities has definitely kind of expanded the horizons in terms of the disability pride for others, as well as actually fully accepting disability as fully part of my identity. I think maybe I did that. I definitely identified as disabled before, but not in I guess the most positive way. Like, it's actually seeing it as, you know, a sincere and genuine part of my identity.
Does anybody, oh, go ahead, Mackenzie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I completely agree with Cole. There's that you have some level of internalized stigma, even when you live with a disability yourself. And, you know, the great part of being a part of a community is that you do understand the general experience of having a disability, but then, like Cole said, you don't know a ton about other disabilities that you don't have yourself until you interact with people who actually have them. And so that's the experience that I've had here at NAMI, and something that we do that we brought to campus in the spring of 2019, I believe, is we brought peer-led support groups to campus. And so I'm one of the facilitators for our support groups, and we've met a whole bunch of students who come in, and you see students who live with really, really highly stigmatized mental illnesses, such as schizophrenia or any of the personality disorders, that you think that nobody has, or that nobody at UT could have something like that because they're so extreme. How could they function? But, you know, we've met a handful of people who have those disorders here. And, you know, I think Niley might have said something about this. We just want to be portrayed as like normal people. And, you know, when you meet people that have those disorders and see that, you know, everyone else here is a student just like you are, then you're able to normalize the experience a lot more and start to break down that stigma within yourself. And that's what I've seen with myself, not only with other mental illnesses, but with my own. So it's been a really neat experience getting to meet other people and learn from their own experiences that they've been through. And then, you know, something I've seen in NAMI is that once people do find our organization and get plugged into that community, a lot of us become empowered to start changing other people's lives. And it creates like this big network that spreads out. And that's how I think that change is being made.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that too. So like I kind of just lost my train of thought. Oh my God. No, I would say like I agree with the whole like you know, we all come in having our internalized stigma and whatnot, like both of you had said before. And for me, before I had joined, like I was kind of ashamed of the fact that I had this disability, and like I was like, this makes me broken. Like that's the viewpoint I had before I came here. Like I am not an actual working person, because that's what it made it seem to be, you know, growing up, like, and whatnot. But then I joined the group on campus, and then I kind of was, when I became a social work major, I was kind of around more disability groups. I met Cole in one of my classes, and he told me about his group. And, you know, you just kind of realize like you're not broken and you shouldn't be ashamed of what you have at all. And so that's what, in my opinion, what happened with me. Like I'm no longer ashamed of what I have, and I'm no longer ashamed that I am considered a disabled person. And so yeah, it changes your perspective on a lot of things.
Cheryl, if I could go to you just because you were snapping and I was like, yes. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Well, I think everybody said it perfectly, and that's kind of why I was snapping. It was just like, yes, it's so correct.
Yes. And you know, I want to say, so kind of pushes back on this idea of what is high versus low functioning. I think that's become so subjective because we start to break down these stereotypes and these barriers, and we're like, what does high functioning even mean at this point? Because everybody's existing in the world in these various ways. And I feel like when we're trying to put these labels of high functioning, or even in, you know, high intelligence, as I'm a sibling of someone with an intellectual disability, I think that's also kind of limiting other people, right? It's not necessarily about them, it's about ourselves and how we can limit other people, I think. And I think that goes back to this idea of ableism and this idea of an internalized ableism that some of us feel. Niley, did you want to add to that as I just kind of jumped in there?
I agree with everyone on like the internalized ableism before you come to UT, or like even before you like join groups. I think one thing that I've learned in the like joining this community is that like, you know, our disabilities are pretty cool. And well, okay, like we bring a lot to the table because we are disabled. And it's, I think if you leverage your disability and as an advantage, it's very interesting. Like I had never seen my disability as an advantage. But like I talked to someone and I was like, oh, because I'm blind, I noticed that like, oh, this isn't accessible, so people won't be able to see it. Or like, oh, I'll be able to like remember like different routes better without any maps. So like I think that's what I've learned is like to be really proud of my disability. And that's something I'm really like really grateful for.
Thank you. Does anyone else kind of have a take on that? Because I love that. I I've only recently, I think, started to take pride in my own disabilities. So I have toys that I am constantly fidgeting with because it's way better than taking a pill to calm down for me. So does anybody else have any thoughts about that particular, like taking pride? What does that mean to take pride in your disability?
Well, I guess I could jump in on that. I guess you just have to find like the good parts in it, because having a disability can be really, really difficult, and as we all know. And so I think it's just important to realize like this is who you are, and you shouldn't like have other people who don't have it like take that away from you, because whether or not we like it, this is who we are. This is what we had. This is our life. And it's important to be proud of that and to find things that are good. Like I remember looking up one day, like advantages to having type 1, and there's things like I can get like a free pass into all the national parks in the US. I get free fast passes for Disney World anytime I want to go into a ride or something like that. You know, you just have to find the good parts to it through all the bad, and it can be really difficult. But it's what I have. It's who I am, and it's important to take pride in that, or to not feel like I said earlier, like you're broken.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that so much, Morgan. That is fast pass. That is awesome. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Cole.
Thank you. I think for me, especially growing up, part of having a physical disability, at least like with working with my mom and like all my physical therapists, is like finding physical adaptations, and like actually being able to be knowledgeable surrounding like physical adaptations. Like for instance, for me with driving, I need to I have like a knob and like a left foot accelerator, because I mean I feel like at least for me, like actually advantage is being able to be a little more knowledgeable and open to, okay, like how do we get like how do I like solve the situation, or like what do I need to do differently than others might not have to do with my circumstances. So yeah.
I can add on to this conversation. Having a mental health condition myself has increased my empathy threshold like tenfold for sure. Because when you have a disability yourself, it's a lot easier to understand the experience of having a disability, even if it's a different one, just knowing what kind of headspace that you can get into when you do have an experience that is so different from other people. And you know, it's really hard and it sucks sometimes, but you know, the thing about taking pride in it is that once you embrace your disability, you're able to tell a bunch of people about it. And that's where I've been finding myself at, is that I'm no longer ashamed to tell people the different things that I struggle with. And having that, you know, threshold of empathy for everyone else has been such a wonderful, I guess, silver lining to having a mental illness. And then getting to see the look on someone's face when you like self-disclose your struggles to them, and seeing like the relief when they realize, oh my God, thank God, like someone else deals with this too. That feels so good. And I don't know, it's becoming like my entire life now. And this is like what I want to dedicate my life to, is you know, being able to share this message and helping people. So I love that I've been able to find that.
And I can jump in here just for a moment. So SSD is focused very much on the services and the compliance and the access piece. And what I love about all these student organizations is that they were all started by students. So it was students who, you know, said, there's a need here. Here's a gap in our experience at UT. What can we do to fill that gap? And I'm excited because all the agencies who are and organizations represented here have survived kind of the generations of students. So what sometimes happens is you get one student who is really excited and then passionate about this, and they start an organization and it goes really well until that student graduates, and then they graduate and it dissolves. And so all of these organizations have been around for a number of years because they've not only had that one student with a passion, but they've really been able to bring other folks on board to make sure that these organizations survive and continue to thrive. So I always love having these organizations when we're meeting with students who are coming into UT or setting up accommodations, and they're kind of talking about that experience of, it's not just the accommodations, but really feeling that kind of isolation or feeling disconnected, being able to say, like, hey, here's some resources, here are some options, places to connect of students who really do understand what you may be going through, and often may have some advice that's more helpful than what we're providing through our office, because we're focused on providing accommodations, but we may not understand what it's like to be living with that on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just so excited that we have these great groups on campus. I always tell students, if you see that gap and you feel like there's something that we can fill that gap with, let's start more organizations. So we've got DASC, that's a cross disability organization, and then both NAMI and Type Texas, are more specific to specific categories of disability. So we're always excited to see how we can continue to grow and sustain, and just hearing all the great work that you're doing and the changes that it's made in your lives and across campus is just really encouraging to see where we've gone, but also exciting to think about where we can move in the future.
Right. I mean, that's really impressive to have such sustainability across groups, and not just because they're student groups, but because they're like existing on a college campus, which is so like fluid and dynamic all the time. So this is like a testament to all of you all. But I think also everything that you kind of talked about today is like finding that group and finding that identity with each other and kind of learning from each other, the importance of that. So we have 10 more minutes, so I want to just like give some space if anybody has any questions. I do want to let you know that on the chat, someone said this panel is life-saving. So that is to you all. But do you guys have any opportunities or events that you might want faculty or students or staff to participate in, or they can participate in, to get involved with your organization or to learn more about your organization? Because there's so many groups on campus, right? How can people find your group?
I guess I'll jump in and say, so you can find our group on Facebook or Instagram. Our Facebook is under Type Texas, and our Instagram is Type Texas CDN. And I'm working currently on having some speakers. Our group is very interested in having some Type 1 speakers come speak to us over Zoom. So I'm currently working on that. Being that we are all very high risk due to COVID, and the fact that this is a medical thing that can turn really bad if they do get COVID, our in-person meetings and whatnot have been postponed for the time being. But yeah, we would still love to have anyone who's interested, who's a Type 1, who would love to join us. And it's a great support group, and we're always all here for each other. So yeah.
Thank you, Morgan. Mackenzie, do you want to go next? And kind of, Emily is like just killing it by putting all the links up in the chat for y'all, by the way. But Mackenzie, do you want to share kind of like anything that might be coming up for staff or faculty or students? Because like student groups, fantastic, great, like you need to be there for students, but like it'd also be kind of nice as someone who is the faculty and staff to have some information for my colleagues. I think that would be awesome. No pressure, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Emily's sending all the links. I can send one more link. We have a link tree, which is like links within one link. Pretty cool. It has all of our social media where you can find us. I want to stress that we'll accept anyone into our organization. There's some student organizations that have like super intense requirements or you have to pay to be a part of it. But for NAMI, like you can literally just start showing up to all of our events and we'll be like, cool, you're here. We're super excited. That's like the environment that you'll find here. I guess I'll do like a brief overview of all the stuff we've been doing this semester. We have also been operating completely online just because not everyone is in Austin right now, and we didn't feel like it was fair to limit anybody. And so we basically tried to take everything we used to do and adapt it to some kind of online format. And so every other week we've got general meetings where we just educate on different topics. And so a week from today, we have our next general meeting and we're talking about personality disorders. And then in addition to general meetings, we have our peer-led support groups. Those happen every Friday from 4:30 to 6. And I will be leading the support group happening tomorrow. And again, everyone is welcome. For anyone who has any experience with a mental health condition, whether it be diagnosed or otherwise, you're welcome to be there. And those are just environments where you can just hear everybody talking about their experience, and we're there to support one another, offer coping skills that have worked for us in the past, different things like that. And then we just have fun social stuff happening. You know, we've got families that we've established in our NAMI community, and you know, each of our officers leads a family, and we've got a rock star team of female officers this year, and so we're the NAMI mommies. Really love that title. I love saying it every time I get the chance. So you can join a family, meet other people. We're doing, you know, game nights. We've been baking, you know, whatever we can think of, we're trying to do it. Yeah, that was like a big ramble. That's a lot of what we're doing. We had a big event happen this past weekend, which was NAMI Walks, and we raised a bunch of money for NAMI Central Texas, who is like our mommy branch of NAMI, I guess you could say. And they got $250,000 for their programming, which was awesome. And again, all their programming is free to everybody. There's support groups for like the Austin area in addition to the support groups that we have here on campus. And then coming up in November, from November 9th through the 13th, we're having our Break the Stigma Week. Again, everything will be online. We'll have a bunch of self-care activities. We've got some speakers coming, so that's kind of on the horizon for us.
I just want to say part of this series is also to share Crip wisdom. Like, so far, everyone has talked about accessibility and how to be accessible, not only during this pandemic time, but like across, like we're talking about accommodations and accessibility and like what does that mean for other people. So like this is also about Crip wisdom, and it's just amazing. Like it's just amazing to see that that is just inherently part of the conversation. And I just want to thank you all for just sharing that and like exuding that. I'll stop now. Other groups, DASC and Disability and Inclusion, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I can go ahead and go next and talk about what DIA has coming up. So we're just trying to push our accessibility UT petition out this semester. So we're going to start an Instagram campaign for that soon, and just overall social media. I put that link in the chat if anybody wanted to go follow us. But yeah, overall, like membership, we mainly just have our agency members, and then any events we hold are open to the public, and those that we hold in the future can be found on our Instagram or other social media. So yeah, a few events that we had last year that I hope to bring back this year. We had a movie night in the end of the fall semester that we discussed what we were talking about earlier, that media portrayal in for disability in the media. And then in April, we were going to have a disability week where we kind of had roundtables and panelists to just kind of create that community that we were also discussing. And I hope that we can bring that back in the spring semester and probably virtually as well. But it got canceled this past spring just because of all the COVID stuff. So yeah, so just stay updated on our Instagram, and I will.
Thank you so much. Niley and Cole, do you want to go next?
I'll go. Sorry. So yes, so just DASC, we've been holding, of course, all our meetings virtually over Zoom for accessibility's sake. I think this semester, this semester we've been focusing primarily on just covering topics related to disability, specifically the month of October. We were really happy to get to partner with the GSC in putting on a disability and feminism event. I loved to hear all the conversations going on there. And then I think over the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to be focusing on other intersectionality topics. I think disability and race, disability and sexuality. We're still kind of figuring all that out research-wise. So yeah, this semester it's been primarily topic-based discussions for our meetings. Hopefully next semester we can kind of look to put Dinner in the Dark and Disability Fest on virtually. And I think, one of the other things that we've been focusing on a lot is making sure that in DASC we're able to get out the vote. So promoting early voting. I think we put out something yesterday over Facebook, but making sure that everything is as accessible as possible information-wise for those of our members who can vote early in person, but also making sure that, of course, ballot information for mail-in is also accessible for everybody, just because I feel like, it's true that, of course, the disability community has, routinely been kind of suppressed in terms of actually getting out the vote, historically speaking. So just, as college students, just being able to fully engage in civic participation. But yeah, Nelly, do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so. Come out to DASC. We have general meetings every Wednesday on Zoom, and they range from, like, I think Cole said, like, intersectionalities between disability and race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality. And then we had a meeting on, like, accessible game night, and we had like fun games or accessible play. We had like we had disability in horror media, which is like fun. So we have like stuff like that. That's just a community of like people who are like disabled and allies, and you just want to get together and hang.
Okay, so people, please check the chat. Folks are sharing links. They're sharing additional information about their organizations. But we are at 1:30, and this has been truly, truly delightful. This has been a very nice break in my day and week. Honestly, month. So thank you for that. I'm just gonna say goodbye to everyone, and thank you for taking time to spend with us and hearing about these amazing organizations and the folks who are leading it, the folks who are sustaining it, and really just kind of breaking open this Crip wisdom, Crip conversation to UT. So thank you very much. I hope y'all are checking the chat because you guys are getting accolades. Yay, okay.